Hello and welcome to that time of the week where I talk all about what Tinto Talks is talking about, and you may recognize this map. It is not one from this week's Tinto Talks. This is actually from Tinto Talk 21, I believe, from way back when we were looking at exploration. And exploration and colonization kind of go hand in hand, in my opinion. So having, or at least in a Paradox game, so having this here is just a good idea to showcase, obviously, the various areas of the world that we're going to be doing a lot of colonization in, because it is kind of relevant. But of course, before we get into all of the business about colonization, let us take a quick little gander at the Saturday building. This time we're looking at a fishing village, which initially might not seem all that important, but there is some very good information here as well. So a fishing village increases the amount of nobles, clerics, burghers you get, increases peasant power, increases food production by 1.5. Now, it needs to be mentioned that this here is not food. This is a good. This is the fish trade good. The fish trade good gives not one food, but multiple food. And we have a nice little table from Johan here to showcase what amount of food each different food good will give us. Rice giving the most, and then if we move down to fish, they give 5. So this here, food production plus 1.5, I believe this here gives 5. Plus 1.5 either is going to mean we're going to get 6.5, or that every food that we get, every fish trade good, is going to give us 1.5 times the amount of food. So an extra 50%. In which case, one fish from a fishing village is either going to give 6.5 or 7.5. It depends, and it could go either way because it's paradox math, and who knows. But yeah, no, I think this information here is very, very useful, very handy, and especially in the way that, you know, rice being the most makes a lot of sense. That's why China was able to have such a colossally huge amount of population, and it is also very labor intensive though. So maybe as technology progresses and you get better methods for farming, maybe I don't think we're going to get wheat being, giving more food than rice per trade good, but it may cost fewer population working the wheat to gain 8 than it does for the rice to gain 10. Something along those lines could be kind of cool. But yeah, I think this is pretty decent. I like it, and if you like this video, maybe click the like button. Boom. Shameless and seamless transition there. Don't you just love it? Anyway, moving on. Obviously, we had the colonization Tinto talk, and we are now going to go and have a look at the responses, starting with not that one, because that's a different thing entirely. We're starting right here. What if you colonize a location that has less than 1,000 native population? This is because you need to get to 1,000 population threshold to fully colonize a location. Will the majority culture switch to whichever has the largest culture moving in? How will this work in the cases of places like Siberia and Finland? Yeah, it'll switch to the one with the majority of the pops. This is basically, what will it look like on the map? Will the majority of the culture swap to being the new majority? I feel like the answer to this one is kind of obvious. Maybe I'm missing something in the question. But yeah, it does kind of, the culture will be the culture. The majority, what it will show on the map will be what the majority culture is. And if you've put a bunch of people there, yeah, no, that, I don't know, that kind of just makes sense to me. Moving on. You said that Yuan could theoretically start colonizing Europe. Is that anywhere in Europe, or only in the areas without a landed country? Could Yuan colonize France? Colonization can happen on landed countries, but there is a lot of restrictions on that I was not aware of when I made my video. In fact, the thumbnail that I used is just simply kind of impossible to come to pass, but we'll get to that. If they have got the range and discover France before France gets their PP bigger. This would have a lot of laugh reacts if laugh reacts were turned on, I'm sure. But yeah, you do need to have a larger PP to be able to colonize over people with smaller PPs. This is just a reality of the way that the world works. And it is because the yuan starts with meritocracy, so they start with an institution that France does not, therefore giving them bigger PP, which makes sense. Can we confirm we can colonize landed countries? Yes, you can. Will pops migrate at random from provinces in your country to the colonies, or is it weighted by the local economic situation, the number of people, and discrimination? Basically, will pops from poorer regions be more likely to try their luck in new lands? Poorer is more likely, or most likely. So there is some weights on which pops will start moving. That is good. But there is also quite a bit of conflicting information about what we can do to influence this as well. I know for British colonization, at least, there was quite a lot of sending the Catholics to the colonies. I'm pretty sure, like, Roanoke, we sent a lot of the Irish Catholics from Liverpool over to the Roanoke colonies. I might be getting those places mixed up, but it's, I have a terrible memory. It is what it is. But yeah, we'll get to it. But certainly, I would like a bit more control, because I think that would be quite reasonable. What's stopping a European power from colonizing West Africa, aside from likely higher population? Disease, malaria, naturally. We know already that there will be an ability for us to construct buildings in lands that we do not own. I am thinking this will be probably brought up in the next couple of Tinto talks, but I'm thinking this is probably going to be a case of us being able to build these colonial outposts on the coastlines of Western Africa. Not colonizing the land because we'd die to malaria, but having these trading posts, these coaling stations, these whatever you want to call them, would be our way of getting trade from Western Africa to Europe without colonizing it, because the colonization of Africa took a bit longer than EU4 would have you believe. Will colonizing a province give us a percent chance of discovering certain trade goods, sort of like how EU4 worked? No. All of the trade goods at the start of the game are set. They are, if this is saying it has fish at the start of the game, it will have fish until the end of the game unless there's some events. There is no question mark when you're colonizing something and then, the percent chance of gaining this trade good or this trade good is this. That's not the case. I wonder if that will be moddable. Is it possible to add the question mark back in there? Because thinking about, for example, Anbana, that mod made heavy use of discoverable trade goods when it came to colonizing the Dwarven Mountains, for example. And if you're not an Anbana aficionado like I am, that maybe makes little sense to you. But basically, discovering trade goods in mountains from prospecting and such makes a lot of sense. So it would be nice if this was moddable. I won't be too upset if it isn't, though, to be fair. Can multiple countries colonize the same province at the same time? Again, a province is a collection of locations. That it takes a lot of time to wrap the head around that one in my experience. But yes, will the populations get mixed? Can the locations in the same province then become parts of different colonial nations? Or is it in the E4 where the one who starts colonizing the first has dibs? So, there can be multiple competing colonial charters in the same province, but it's not first come, first served. Rather, the first country to reach the threshold of religion and culture in each location wins the ownership. You keep the locations that you've colonized through this, but the overall province itself can just be split between two countries, which I think is kind of cool and will lead to horrific amounts of border gore on the coast of America, I'm certain. Does this mean that all trade goods reset at the start of the game? Yes, maybe I should have moved that a little earlier in my thing, but, that makes sense. Love it. Is it possible for this action to target a specific minority within a province? For example, send the Catholics of Liverpool to America, but not the Anglicans. Or would it just send everyone in Liverpool to Roanoke without accounting for religion? And as you can see by the dislike ratio on this, no. You can't specifically choose to send religious minority pops, and the system is biased towards sending pops from true faith majority home locations. It would be a waste of time anyway, as you need pops to be of your culture and religion for a colony to flip in your favor. So, this was disliked, but I will try to defend it. The colony of Roanoke, you could say, yeah, it would be nice if I could just send all of the, the Irish Catholics over there to improve my cultural unity. We already know that the poorer pops will be prioritized, so that's good. It also prioritizes pops from true faith majority home locations. Liverpool, I believe, was already and always was majority. I mean, obviously the moment England turned Anglican, it wasn't, but by the time of the colonization and such, I believe it was pretty much a majority Anglican anyway. And the Irish Catholics that were sent over were a minority. Needing pops to be of your culture and religion, it is culture group, not just culture, and I believe it's no, it is just religion, but it is culture group, not just culture. I'm kind of fine with that because I can probably still send these Catholics to Roanoke after the colony is established. Probably. I mean, if I can, then I'm happy. If I can't, then I'm a little bit iffy on it. But I'm just trying to wrap my head around a way to be okay with this, basically. It's expel minorities in EU4 was terrible, so any amount of being able to directly choose which pops are going to be colonizing is going to be a step up, and it would just be nice if there was a little bit more depth in it, a little bit more explanation of what we can do when we're, moving pops around. Yeah. Is it possible? And yes, basically the Johan is also answering the question. It will send any pop from it. But is it weighted? I mean, you said earlier you said it was going to prioritize the poorer pops. I imagine if you're a religious and cultural minority in a country, you're probably going to be poorer. It's one of those things. It's one of those things that is like just slightly iffy. But I would like to know your thoughts on this bit as well. So please do leave them in the comment section below. Didn't you especially mention expelling minorities as a way to boost a colony? Expelling minorities solves the problems relating to minorities being in your homeland by moving those problems to your colonies. Out of sight, out of mind. Sure, but you just told us that we can't. But now you're telling us that we can. So which is it? I kind of need a little bit more direct and specific information here because, honestly, kind of feels like we're getting contradicting information on this one. Yeah, and that's the end of this. Like, I don't know. You can't choose to send religious minority pops, but you can expel minorities. Is that just then cultural minorities? Why can't I send religious minorities? Like, I feel like that could totally be a part of the same system. It will send any pop from it. Sure. This then is a different system. Maybe utilizing the system. Oh, what's it called? The one where I can use my counselors to do specific jobs in certain areas. I can't remember what that's called, but that maybe is what this is. But like, let me choose religious minorities as well. Let me fix my religious problems by sending my religious people to the colonies. Maybe even just after the colony is set up. Because, yeah, you need pops of your culture and religion for a colony to flip in your favor. Okay? After it's flipped in my favor, then let me expel. Something along those lines would be enough for me, I guess. But yeah, moving on. Some questions. We can colonize provinces of fully fledged tanks like we could with EU4. EU3 hordes. What's the difference in power projection that leads you to colonize provinces? It is greater than 10. And we know from some of the images of technology that we've seen that in, say, the meritocracy technologies that we can get by embracing that institution. One of them is plus 10 power projection. So that seems reasonable there. Is there a way to actually push out only specific pops from a province rather than picking one with a lot of minorities? No. But again, moving pops after the colony is finished is something potentially that we can do, maybe? Is it possible to break the restrictions at the cost of relations, slower growth and such? Basically talking about the Treaty of Tordesillas, where Spain and Portugal kind of split the New World between them. But they're still working on how it will work, so that's why he was a bit vague. To clarify, you set up the chart of the entire province, but gain control of each location once the location itself reaches the conditions. Yes. Flipping is per location. Castile and Portugal might have colonial charters in the same province, but end up with half the locations each. Kind of cool. I like that. Could our lowland minor have what it takes to colonize? Yes, though it will be harder to become continental power in the New World than, say, Castile or England because of the limited access to pops in their home locations could be a limiting factor. So, higher population countries will colonize better. Okay. But again, we need to make the distinction because somebody will now come along and say, but wait, bloody Netherlands was a relatively minor population-wise than you know, Spain or England. And they went and got the whole of the Dutch East Indies. They got all of Indonesia. Yeah, sure. However, Indonesia has tags on it, and it wouldn't work in the same way as, say, colonizing Cuba or colonizing, New York. Because that colonization is sending pops to set up settlements. The colonization of Indonesia by the Dutch was conquest. There was also a lot of comments that I didn't apply here, asking about, what about the Spanish colonization of, the Aztecs or the Spanish colonization of the Incas? And again, that didn't happen through colonization, that happened through conquest. And subsuming those conquests into colonies. Still colonization by, like, a modern usage of the term, but for game mechanic-wise, that isn't colonization, that is conquest. But yeah, alright, moving on. This is a very, very energetic song that's going on in the background, sorry. We're currently listening to the Empire Total War soundtrack, which is, I think, pretty fitting for a dev diary on colonization. How do you imitate the British colonization of India or the Dutch colonization of Indonesia? I didn't know this one was coming up next, but I guess that I already kind of answered that. Both those regions stayed in the majority Hindu and Muslim. I also appreciate the possibility that I can colonize Algiers as France, keep it, and move them all to the Greenland. So, arguably, the British colonization of India was more traditional conquest than how we depict the colonial charters, as the European administration never outnumbered the locals. Technically, though, traditional conquest, I would argue, not really the right term. It wasn't like we went in with an army and forcefully said, now you are Britain land. There was a lot of it was Indian chieftains and such, kingdoms and such, pledging allegiance to the British in return for economic benefits or to get an edge over their rivals or some such way like that. Fast forward over a period of time and a lot of that happening, and yeah, there's a lot more diplomacy going on than just traditional conquest, in my opinion, and I think pretty much accepted opinion. Once the charter is set up, how does actual migration work? Hopefully something we can move specific pops with. Do pops only migrate to one location at a time, to all of them at the same time? Is the system weighted by climate, trade, good, or something alike? So the focus is always on a specific target location until it flips, and then it moves to another one. Currently, it's weighted towards the coastal locations in high populations. I am fine. Okay, so this is charter, not when the colony is set up. So apologies for that. I got that mistaken. But yeah, so you start flipping a single location, then it will choose another one. Apparently, But again, there's a little bit of conflicting information on this as well, which I guess we'll get to in a moment. Will Norway be able to colonize North America due to Greenland's proximity, or does Greenland not count as Norway for the sake of exploration? Colonization range due to Greenland and Iceland being a subject nation, blah blah blah. Greenland and Iceland count as their own countries, and nothing is stopping them from exploring and colonizing Canada before anyone else, except their tiny economies that won't be able to reliably sustain exploration missions, colonies, or even themselves. It would be very difficult to play as Greenland, I imagine, and I personally don't think it is a good starter country. However, Greenland is actually a great place to learn the way the game works, as it's so hard to sustain yourself and basically becomes a survival sim where every choice relating to food and population counts. Good luck with your world conquest. I don't understand that. I'm going to learn the game playing in bloody Italy, where I have a high population, a reliable source of income, and good trade. I want to learn the game mechanics, and then try to survive, I guess. Certainly an interesting take. Not one I would have agreed with. You might consider, instead of 0, the threshold to be 1,000. Basically, when a place reaches 0, it becomes decolonized, de-tagged, I guess. The threshold to be 1,000, just like the colonization threshold. If you have more than 1,000 and meet the conditions, you control the location. If you have less than 1,000, then you would lose control of the location. That's most of Iceland wiped on the first tick. Not only Iceland, there's a whole lot of Europe that also just becomes unowned. That's silly. All of, lots and lots of the places that we've read about in the Tinto maps have less than 1,000 population. Do they just instantly get murked? They're gone. No. Does this mean, for instance, that as Spain, I can colonize Morocco, even though Morocco is fully owned already by other countries, specifically Morocco? Only if the difference in power projection is big enough to allow you to colonize it. It's probably going to be much faster to directly start conquering them than waiting for the PP to grow so much. How does it work for Spain? This model of colonization works for England, but not for Spain. Spain owned, via claim, most of America already, without having to send thousands of people to live there. In fact, a lot of Spanish lands in America were empty. There are thousands of Spanish per location. Thinking of places like California, all of southern modern USA, all of Argentina, Patagonia, etc. So, there are ways of getting soft control over a location and its resources without directly owning it. This is kind of huge, and information I'd wish we knew more about. It's kind of what happened historically with the misiones and presidios in some of the more remote Spanish holdings in America. More about this next week. Well, it's good. I like that we're going to learn more about it next week. Of course, we'll get to what is coming next week in a bit. But yeah, certainly excited to learn more about that. Nations that were colonized in this period were not colonized because they didn't have techs as good as the Europeans, but because they had lower population concentration, and often lacked the means to push back the colonizers. Who can colonize who should really be a balance of power thing rather than a tech thing. I mean, the PP kind of is a balance of power thing. Anyway, this system allows for it. You need to be able to move enough population over that you get close to a majority of the target location for it to flip. Not really something you would do in most places, except a Columbian exchange ravaged America, or later in the game when European countries have gotten a significant advantage. Sure, getting a single location in West Africa may be possible by the 16th century, but with the coastal locations having about 8,000 to 15,000 pops in them, even with the very decentralized people living there, then it would still require at least 40% of the pops to be of your culture and religion, which is non-trivial to move there in those amounts, especially in areas with diseases killing you off. Just colonizing entire Ijaw in West Africa requires at least 60,000 pops moved there, not accounting for disease and natives disliking it, killing of someone. This is at least 50 years, with all the techs of that age and cabinet focused on supporting it. So, colonizing West Africa early on, if you get vision of it, gonna be monstrously difficult and take a very, very long time. And you're gonna be losing a lot of pops from your homeland that you might want to keep in your homeland early on. Yeah, going more for places with low populations, like America that got wrecked by plague, seems way more viable. Certainly Certainly, yeah. Uh, I like that basically it's going to be prohibitively expensive, both in population and I mean, you're spending money doing colonization. It's prohibitively expensive in time as well to colonize a single province in Africa. I like that. So it means we're hopefully not going to have the entirety of Africa colonized by the end of the game. One thing that comes to mind: say I'm France and I'm at war with England with many colonies. If my fleet were fully to blockade the UK, all of the coast blockaded, how would that affect their colonies and the trade that comes from their colonies? Can we fully cut off an island nation from trade? Can we starve their colonies by blockading their overlord and sending stuff to them? So he didn't answer most of it, but the speed of colonizing depends a lot on the maritime presence, I imagine he missed a word, of your home region. Cool. Does it stop entirely, though? I don't know. Blockades were, they were effective, but they weren't 100% effective, so I could see something about, it's slowing down but not stopping entirely. It seems easily exploitable. This is something I've heard so much. A lot of people saying that they just think this is going to be exploited immediately, and then people are going to be able to colonize, over countries instead of warring them. It's going to be faster, and we get world conquest and blah 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 blah. I don't see it. I don't see the exploits that people are cooking up in their heads. Surely a player can get their PP much higher than the AI and basically colonize everybody. I mean, even if you have your PP higher, say England managed to get a different religious group than France, gets their PP so high that France is never catching up, and then it starts to colonize France. There's still a fuck ton of population in France. So you're just not going to have the population available to get the amount of percentage you need to have any locations in France flip to being your control. I don't see the exploits people are cooking up in their heads. I really don't. Can you create as many colonial nations as you like, or is there a limit? Like, let's say colonial regions. It is one per province in theory. You're probably not going to want to go with one per province. Probably going to, group a couple of provinces together at least. But I suppose if it is one per province that you get, then they're all going to be pretty weak and unable to directly rival you, unless they ally together at least. Some questions. As long as they meet the power projection requirements, can all countries colonize, or do they need some tech, law, etc.? So they need advances for it to exist in the age of traditions. Can landless countries colonize? No, they don't own land. Considering the power projection requirements, is it expected that the major New World powers, like Incas, Aztecs, and Mayas, will not be able to, they won't be able to colonize neighboring countries at the game start? It's expected that they can't. They will use another great mechanic for painting maps: conquest. Fair enough. Could you create a colonial nation in conquered land? Only in overseas, so that's good. If you couldn't create a colonial nation in conquered land, then you wouldn't be able to colonize Mexico because of the Aztecs existing there. Can you violate other nations' colonial treaties? Like, could I as France start colonizing northern Scandinavia if I wanted to? You'd need to fight a war for it. You can't just... If somebody has a colonial claim, you're actually going to have to fight them to be able to colonize the places they have claims on, which is certainly an interesting scenario. I'm not sure I'm entirely vibing with that, because I know, speaking of northern Scandinavia, Sweden violated their colonial treaty with Novgorod on several instances. And I don't think they had to fight a war for it either, so yeah, I don't know. Since PP is not gained through actions, it means it's semi-permanent. It is entirely permanent, in fact. If I make a colonial nation too big, will it increase their desire for independence? Can multiple small colonial nations unite to fight their overlord if you make them all unhappy? They will unite, yes. So, Britain having the 13 colonies uniting and fighting that war of independence. I don't think that's not very likely, though. It won't happen. Don't worry about it. Will it allow the players to plan the most optimal way to get the trade goods they desire? No, because you can't cherry pick locations. You make a charter for a province, and then it will colonize those locations within the province semi-randomly, focusing on coastal provinces first, and also bordering locations. I like it. It's good. So, provinces in the New World, kind of a wild mix of all European cultures that attempt to colonize the area. Wow, very cool. It's one of the fun side effects. Yes, horrific border gore is going to be a glorious side effect. Although, I suppose it's just going to be also cultures, because if you and, say you're in England, and your colonial rival is France, and you're both trying to set up a colonial charter in the same place, and you're both sending population to the same location. Say you get to the threshold first, the population that France sent there, that's just lost population. You're not getting that back. It's gone. So that is certainly well, it's not gone. It's now in England's colony. They're owned by the British Crown now. They're lost to you, but you're basically feeding England a healthier colony, let's say, with worse food because British food is better. Moving on. I'm going to get comments about that. It's going to be lovely. Distance influences both the rate at which people migrate and increases the cost, making it more difficult to colonize faraway province. But from the screenshot, it seems that the distance is calculated from your capital rather than your nearest core province. Does this mean there is no advantage to first colonizing an area closer to your capital as a stepping stone to a rich strategic province if you're further away? Not really. I don't like this. I think I like the stepping stone system that we have in EU4. I think it worked really well. Not having that, I'm kind of against. Rule Britannia also responded to this not really with, personally, I think it's a significant drawback. It is reasonable that distance to capital should have an impact, but it should be easier to colonize a location far away if you already have a core or fully fledged colony with excellent infrastructure much closer. Would it not be possible to, for example, make the penalty a weighted average between the distance to the capital and the nearest coastal province with a harbour at a certain level of development? This would make the system more realistic in my view. Johan responds saying, yeah, it would be more realistic. It's also a lot of distance calculation sorting, so for now it's just the capital. I apologise, that's an alarm that's going off for me. For now it's just the capital. In theory, we could set a staging area for the colonial charter when we start it, and have it calculate distance from there. Actually, that's pretty trivial to do, and we could also weight it so that it's also likelier to take pups from that origin as well. And we could add a goods demand for it as well, and have some sort of development bonus to the origin. I love this comment. This comment is, yeah, it's more realistic, but we can't because of the calculation distance sorting. So for now, it's just this. But, in theory, we could do this. And it could have this. Actually, that's easy. Yo, we could also weight it to be like this. We could add goods to... Oh, we could do this. We could have some of that. And now it's on his to-do list. I love that. I love that. Like, there is a progression in this comment from dismissal to idea to to-do list. I love it. It's fantastic. This comment gets a heart. This is fantastic stuff. Yeah, no, love that. Once the colonial charter is set up, how does the actual migration work? Do pups only migrate to one location at a time? Or to all of them at the same time? Is the system weighted by climate, trade, good, or something alike? So they pick a new target location every N months. Which is kind of different to what we heard earlier, where it was said that they would flip a location and then choose another one. But here they pick new target locations every N months. This is just another one of those instances of the conflicting information that we've been talking about. I don't know how colonization works, because we've been told two different things that are contradictory. Again, if somebody has a better insight into this, if somebody can find some information that I haven't, or that I've skipped over, that I missed, that I misread, please let me know. Since multiple nations can colonize the same province and landed countries can have charters on them, once a location flips, can the other settler country maintain its charter and try to flip it back, or does it become a potential war between the states? Only if they got a big enough PP and the target is a different religion group, so you could, colonize over them in turn. I guess this is an example of this could be the Aztecs have managed to get big PP, and they have started to colonize Florida. The British, also big PP, colonizing Florida. Say the Aztecs get a location first. the British have a larger PP than the Aztecs and then start colonizing over the location that the Aztecs just colonized, that is something that could happen. That is one example. I guess we could also look at, maybe Morocco and France both colonizing the same place. But yeah, there's a lot of different examples of what one can do. If you have a colonial charter neighbouring a land province of yours, will it prioritise getting settlers from there? For example, if Sweden starts colonising Finland, will more of the settlers be drawn from neighbouring Finnish provinces owned by Sweden rather than the Swedish heartland? So, the algorithm here puts all possible origin locations, i.e. those where dominant religion is state religion and the dominant culture is accepted or primary and has at least 1,000 peasants. Those are weighted by the amount of peasants. Plus 50% if same area, plus 150% if same region, and plus 1,000% if the origin has a negative migration attraction. Then it's a random roll based from this. So yes, when Sweden colonizes Norland and Finland, it's likely to pick up pops from nearby areas. Cool, I like that. That's explained pretty well. I'm not sure how accepted cultures work in Project Caesar yet, but would the locations also flip if they were of an accepted culture? Say Spain colonizing with Catalan or Basque pops, France with Occitanes, or Bavaria formed Germany using Hessians and Franconians. Any primary or accepted pop is fine. It just needs to be apparently the same religion, but culture group or accepted culture, I guess, is more acceptable there. Any accepted culture is fine. Again, though, we have no idea how culture acceptance works. Hopefully it's different to EU4, because in EU4 it was kind of shit. If Yuan could theoretically colonize France, what's to stop a larger European countries colonizing smaller ones? For example, England using the colonization mechanism to take over Ireland. And again, this is what I originally imagined, and that's why my thumbnail was a picture of England with arrows over Ireland. Evidently I was wrong. Because England and Ireland are in the same religious group, and even after England becomes Anglican, we're still in the same religious group. The likelihood of England being more than one age ahead in tech over Ireland is not likely. You have to do it the historical way. Conquest. Fair enough. And then move populations to your conquested areas. Again, I still didn't really understand it. What if I accept the culture and religion of the province I'm colonizing? Say England accepting Irish culture, then trying to colonize Ireland. How would that work? You can't colonize someone of the same religious group. Sure, okay. That's fine. Say I am England and I'm colonizing over, Cuba. Colonizing over Northeast America, the Iroquois culture. Alright, say I'm colonizing over them. They are the wrong religious group, so that's fine. But say I accept that culture. Will that make colonizing the rest of the locations with that culture trivial for me? I'd imagine probably. The way I'm understanding this, the answer's probably. I said probably way too many times. Is it even a word anymore? I think that's likely. You mentioned Yuan colonizing, so I want to ask, what discourages Yuan from colonizing parts of the Spice Islands, the Philippines, Okinawa, etc.? Is there anything in game to actively discourage AI colonization outside of economic factors? So, at the start of the game, Yuan can send about 12 colonists a month to each charter in the Age of Renaissance. Most of these areas are also owned by countries with similar PP, but Taiwan is not as organized, so it doesn't have a tag. Still, there's about 50 to 60,000 people living in each of the 4 provinces in Taiwan. 4 provinces in Taiwan? Is this a case of it still needs Johan to wrap his head around the difference between a location and a province? Because I don't think we're ever getting 4 provinces in Taiwan. I think there's 4 locations in Taiwan. 50 to 60,000 people living in each of the 4 locations. We're going to go with location as the assumption here, because I think Taiwan's a bit too small for 4 provinces. Maybe it isn't, because they had multiple provinces in EU4. Maybe it is. Okay, we'll assume it is provinces then. We'll assume it is provinces. 50 to 60,000 people living in each of the 4 provinces in Taiwan. In this age, you'll need about 40+% to flip them. So you need to send about 34,000 people to the islands. That's about 6,800 months. And if you support a charter, you're down to 3,200 months, or about 266 years. Since colonists are picked from any locations where the dominant culture is accepted, it's not likely that all of them are good as well. So it's prohibitively going to take a shit ton of time. If you are Yuan and trying to colonize Taiwan, you are going to, basically just be feeding Taiwan population. I guess when the Europeans finally arrive over there, maybe there'll be, they'll have a lot more institutions by Yuan at that time, so maybe they'll be able to colonize faster. But yeah, I don't know. This is a pretty good way to stop Yuan from colonizing just for free, I guess, or ahistorically. What if two countries with the same primary culture and religion are colonizing the same province or location? How does it determine who gets the flipping if it's based on culture and religion? In that situation, it is the first charter started. I think it could be highest PP, and then secondarily, if the PP is the same, highest prestige. And again, if that is the same, then go to who started first. I think there are better first options than this. How will cultures and religions work in the New World? Will the native population slowly be replaced or assimilated by the colonizers, or will it be like in EU4, where colonies are primarily made up of native cultures from nations and confederacies that have been conquered? So it depends. In areas where there's a large native majority, or you conquered, the likelihood of total assimilation is 0. If it's like the east coast of the USA, with low population, ravaged by Eurasian diseases, then yes. There's hardly going to be that many natives left at the end of the game. This seems like a very, let's say, natural, a very organic way of simulating, how these populations were dispersed historically. And I really like that. It's a really elegant solution, I think. And finally, the final question we have here. Hopefully it's not a common occurrence for depopulating states. Basically going to 0 pops and a location becoming tagless. Depopulating states in Imperator was not one of my favorite game mechanics. I agree. The whole sieges blue countries were not fun, particularly with their interactions with colonization and war goals. So St. Dave is saying here that he's never seen it happen in normal play, even with war and famine and disease and immigration, so it's definitely not common. In Imperator, we had pops being a little bit less realistic than they seem to be in Project Caesar. Specifically, a pop was not a person. A pop was a significant amount of people. There were never truly defined, but my estimations put it around about 3,000 to 5,000 individual people per pop in Imperator. So an area losing its pops, which were quite large, is a lot easier than losing population and, how many people are in a place. So I think that is perfectly reasonable, and I don't think this is very likely. But anyway, that is the Dev Diary. Next Dev Diary, excuse me, is going to be looking at these. These are landless societies, landless tags that we may be able to play. It is looking more and more likely that we will be able to play landless tags. Be that like here, decentralized populations, or the banking families that we learned about way back when. There is going to be a way, I think, for us to play these, and we're going to be learning about that on Wednesday. So if you are looking forward to that as much as I am, for an entirely new way to play Paradox Grand Strategy games, then, hit the subscribe button and maybe ring the bell, and then you will get notified when I make a video when that Dev Diary comes out. And we'll learn together, because I am very excited for this as well. Thank you all very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you on Wednesday. Bye-bye.